Chapter 21. Re-entry. It was something straight out of a nightmare. It was every nightmare rolled in one. The hideously tattooed face, the knife, Archangel, out of space. Alex could only watch helplessly as Casper headed towards him, flying, arms outstretched, legs trailing behind him. What was he doing in the space station? And suddenly Alex understood. The second rocket, the orangutan, driven so-called experiment in weightlessness. They had all been part of the plan. There was no experiment. There never had been. Casper had gone up in Gabriel 7, and Alex knew why. His own experience of the launch should have made him see that it would have been completely insane to try sending an armed bomb into space. The terrible vibrations would have set it off before it had even left the atmosphere. Only when it was in space could it be armed. That had meant sending someone up with it. Casper, but now he needed to get back again. That was the point of the second rocket. Professor Singh must have known all along the Sawyers had been sent up to collect him, and Casper would surely have left instructions behind. If anything went wrong, if the rocket didn't arrive, the professor would have been killed. No wonder he had looked so nervous. In the end, he had made a choice: send the rocket and let the two of them fight it out. That was something else. Alex understood. There were now two of them in the space station, but Casper passed through the first node, where he was bathed momentarily in soft pink light before he emerged to be adept at manipulating himself in zero gravity. He had aimed carefully and pushed off lightly. One hand touched the knife. He was taking his time, but then he knew Alex had nowhere to hide. 2 seconds remained before they would come face to face in a module barely large enough for them both. Alex searched around for a weapon, anything he could use to defend himself, but everything was packed down too neatly. The cupboards and lockers were closed. He was still feeling sick and disoriented, and every moment he made threatened to propel himself in the wrong direction. If he lost control and went into another spin, he would be finished. Casper would cut him to pieces. Casper passed through the next node. In a few moments he would arrive in the same model as Alex, the sleeping area. This was the place Professor Singh and Ed Stolsky had shown him on the map. The heart of Archangel. It seemed an appropriate meeting point. Maybe he could reason with Casper. The mission was pointless now. Surely he would sense it. He would see sense. But I doubted it. Casper's eyes looked empty. Mad. Casper's eyes looked empty. Mad. Then there was a twisted smile on his lips. The knife. He was holding a Sabatier, the blade, a single piece of high-carbon stainless steel. Hand-honed and about 10 centimeters long. Where had he got it from? He could possibly brought it with him. I remembered Archangel was a hotel. One day it might have been a chef cutting sirloin steak for some American multi-millionaire, and someone had made sure he was properly equipped. Casper must have picked up the knife as he passed through the kitchen. As Casper entered the sleeping area, he did the only thing he could. He crashed low and kicked out, propelling himself along. A few inches above the pool, as he was swimming underwater in the pool, his moves caught Casper's unawareness, and the man sailed past above him. Alex realized there was one thing that he couldn't do in zero gravity: change direction. Casper continued to the far wall as he passed. He slashed down with the knife. I felt the tip cut into the suit between his shoulder blades. He was lucky. Another few millimeters and he would have drawn blood. It had sliced the suit material, but it hadn't pierced his skin. Casper reached the far wall and clung onto one of the handles. Alex continued through into the next model and managed to stop himself. He found himself surrounded by gym equipment, a treadmill, a pair of chest expanders, a rowing machine, but nothing he could throw at Casper. Where were the weights? Of course, there was no point of having weights in a weightless environment. I scrambled for one of the lockers and the door fell open. There were tools inside. A hammer, a curious-shaped ratchet, some sort of bolt tightener. While the hammer pulled it free and held it in front of him. And suddenly saw Casper's preparing to launch a crazy second attack. The man seemed crazed, as if he were on drugs. Perhaps he was. Or perhaps he has found the experience of being in space is terrifying as anything. Casper. Alice wasn't sure what to call him. What was his real name? Magnus Payne, but that wasn't how the two reached each other. It's over, he went on. There's no point in this. Everything is dead. CIA is controlling Flamingo Bay. You're lying. How do you think I got it? There's nothing for you to do. Dropping Archangel on Washington, there's no point. Dreven's dead. No. Two continents, twisted in anger, disbelief as Casper kicked off. This time travelling diagonally down. There was no point trying to reason with him. Whatever had happened on Flamingo Bay, Casper needed the Sawyers. Alice stood in his way. Sawyers had to die. Casper moved towards him. Alice brought the hammer around, threw it with all his strength for a moment. Threw it with all his strength. For a moment, he thought it was slow motion. Wasn't that what would happen in film? But it didn't. The hammer spun at full speed through the air and hit Casper on the shoulder. But would the hammer do any damage if it weighed nothing? Once again, he walked back to the GP, to his physics class, starting work on his GCSES. The hammer picked up energy because of its motion. The energy was dispersed when it came to rest. In this instant, it came to rest because it had hit Casper square one. Casper howled and dropped the knife, and it dispersed equally pain. But his forward motion was enough to send Alice stumbling back, and for a moment, he lost control. His shoulders crashed into a wall. Perhaps it was ceiling or the floor. It made no difference. Casper leaned forward. He plunged down as if he had been fired from a gun. A second later, he was on top of Alex. The blue, angry skin of the man's face was just inches away. Eyes full of hatred glared at him. Casper's hand closed around his throat and began to tighten. The man was strangling him. There was nothing Alex could do. He had no gadgets, no weapons. He couldn't even move. He could feel metal plates against his shoulders. One of the lockers pressing against his back. Casper was floating horizontally above him, connecting to Alex only by his hands. His breath was no longer reaching Alex's lungs. The grip was too tight. He felt dizzy. In a few seconds, he would pass out. Barely knowing what he was doing, he scrambled behind him. His knuckles brushed against some sort of lever. What was it? Even as the consciousness began to leave him, Alex remembered he knew what the lever did, but now he couldn't find it. Suddenly he lashed out, fraying hand caught hold of it. He pulled down. The shutter opened, and the light that had blinded him before exploding the model a second time shafting in over his shoulder. The window was facing directly into the sun, and the light had physical force and burst in. Alex could feel it burning his neck and shoulders. The whole capsule seemed to disintegrate into a brilliant chaos of white and silver, all the other colours sucked out. A Casper screamed as the light seared. It was as if he had been punched in the face by the sun itself, and his hands fell instinctively, legs up, and kicked. His feet slammed in Casper's stomach. Alex's back was against the wall, and Casper was sent hurtling towards the other side of the model. The saboteur knife was right behind him. He had been hovering there at its deadly point, aiming at Casper's neck. Casper travelled backwards with him. Then the handle came into contact with the ball. The blade entered the city of Beijing and continued its journey, burrowing itself in the word's surface. Casper's body jerked as if it had been electrocuted. Then he was still lying underneath him. I watched in disbelief. Casper's arms were down towards him. He was in the middle of the model, not touching any surface, suspended there. A string of bright crimson marbles appeared and began to orbit around his head. They grew larger. Now they were golf balls, trailing away, glistening red. The knife had served an artery. Casper's blood hung around him like a gross to a Christmas decoration. Alex had enough. The model was heating up brightly, so exposed to the sun, and he reached out and closed the shutter. A shadow fell across Casper's face. The marbles darkened. With his skin crawling, wanting to get away from the obstinate, floating away, Alex dragged himself into the next model, and using a series of Velcro grips, he ran himself next to a space toilet. A grey plastic box with some sort of cone device floating at the end of the probe. He needed to use it. He was going to be sick. Grimly he swallowed, forcing himself to stay calm. He didn't want to find out what vomit looked like in outer space. The bomb, how much time did he have left? He looked at his watch. 1 minute past 4. Just 29 minutes left. He had to move quickly, to have come so far, to have been through so much, only to die now. He forced himself to concentrate. He He forced himself to concentrate, to control his movements. He remembered the map he had been shown in the control center. He knew where he had to go. The hatch leading into the capsule that had brought Casper into space was open, and I saw the bomb at once. It was shaped like a torpedo, black with 6 tiny switches and a glass panel with a digital readout. The whole thing was strapped to the wall, held in place with Velcro with a ghastly sort of vaccination. Alex lowered himself in the model and floated next to it. There was a 6-foot figure display rapidly counting down. 27 minutes, 7 seconds, 5 milliseconds. Alex checked it against his watch. Yes, 3 minutes past 4. He had just 27 minutes left. Could he turn it off? Alex examined the switches, but there was no symbol, not telling what function they performed. Did he dare press one? If most things, he'd been blown to smithereens. He reached out a finger. His mouth was dry, being so close to the bomb, filled with horror. He had to try, didn't he? Dread might have perverted the genius of Archangel, but even so, the space station was a technological miracle, completely unique. The world's first hotel in orbit around the Earth. Could I really allow it to be destroyed? His finger rested on top of the switch. All he had to do was flick it. It might deactivate the bomb, but it might set it off. The question was, did he dare take the risk? The numbers in display were still counted down. Now it showed 25, 33, 25 minutes, 33 seconds, 0 milliseconds. Alex swore. Why didn't they have some sort of rubbish chute? Then you could get rid of the bomb, jettion it into outer space. There probably wasn't an airlock on Archangel, but he had no idea how to operate it. Anyway, there was no time. His finger was still touching the switch, one of the 6 switches. In a 1 in 6 chance of getting it right. No good enough. I let out a long, shuddering breath and withdrew his hand. He took hold of the still ticking top bomb and then unfastened it and then eased it up through the hatch and back into the centre of the space hotel. Skin had told him where to leave it, but Alex made a decision for himself. The toilet. Somewhere it seemed a fitting end. He lowered the nose of the torpedo into it, left it there. It was time to go. He pushed himself off as gently as he could, and he was rewarded with a slow, careful position back towards the waiting model of the Sawyers. He passed something with Casper, and they had taken care not to look up. In a few minutes' time, the dead man was going to be given one of the most spectacular cremations anyone could ask for. It was more than he deserved. The docking station was ahead of him. There was one last thing he had to do. He looked at his watch. 11 minutes past 4. There was just 90 minutes remaining. Alex knew it was madness to waste even a few seconds. He would never have his opportunity again. He found another window on the opposite side of the sun. I suddenly looked out, and there it was, planet Earth, seen from outer space. He first thought how big it was, and second how small. Of course, he had seen images of the Earth taken by astronauts. This was different. He was seeing it with his own eyes, and he was moving as if he crouched in front. So everyone lost it. As he crouched in front of the portal, he was travelling so fast that it would take him just 19 minutes to go all the way round. No wonder it seemed so small. Yet the Earth filled his vision. All the life in the universe, 5 billion people, was concentrated there, and the thought of that was enormous. He was struck by the colours. No photographs could have prepared him for the sheer iridescence of the planet. It looked as if it was lit from inside. At first it seemed that everything was blue and white. Most of the planet was water, and I remember lying on his back when he was small, staring at the perfect summer ball. If he could have turned the sky into a ball, that's what he was seeing now. But as he gazed down, he began to make out the shape of coastlines. Then light of emerald green, and then Archangel turned the corner of the world. And there was Africa, all over Africa ahead of him. Suddenly he was seeing intense gold, yellow and red, mountain, and deserted but no cities. Nothing moved. He wondered if he was an alien, he wondered if he was an alien and came upon the Earth. He passed by without being aware of the teeming life below. But then it became night, and he found himself over the western Mediterranean seaboard. and even from 300 miles away, he could make out thousands of electric lights that had to be man-made. Spain and Gibraltar, Turkey, Tunisia, Algeria, Lebanon, all of them were visible at once. The tiny lights blinking like fireflies. There were storms over Europe. I saw lightning shimmering through the clouds. It wasn't just that there were life on Earth. The whole Earth was alive. I could feel it pulsating beneath him, and suddenly he knew that for all its technology, Arcadia was a sterile, dead place. He didn't care that soon he would no longer exist. He had made the right decision. I remember I felt a sense of loneliness. He remembered for the rest of his life. He wanted to go home. He made his way to the Soyuz model, trying to control his progress, but still crashing into the walls, only by holding one of the handrails to prevent himself from going into another sickening spin. He had raging thirst, and wished he'd found himself something to drink before he left. What happened when he opened a can of Coke in space? He would never find out. Somehow he reached the entrance and folded himself in. He was operating an automatic. All he wanted to get was to get away. He reached up and closed the hatch, turned the lever to lock it before blasting off. There was a compartment he had travelled up in, but he was going to stay behind. There was a second hatch underneath him, and he opened it, passing through the re-entry model below. There was more room here. Of course, the re-entry model had to be big enough for Caspar. He strapped himself into the seat, put another heads and put it on, wondering if it would work. Alex, what is your status? It was Smile's voice. He'd never been happy to hear anyone. The bomb is still active, he said. He looked at his watch. 25 past. Professor Singh lied to us, he went on. Caspar was here, and now I've only got 5 minutes left. Get me out of here. Another burst of static, a disembodied voice, muttering of half words. Made no sense. There had to be something wrong with the radio. That's what would happen next. How long would he have to sit here before he disengaged? And what would happen if he didn't? The second hand on his watch ticked around. He seemed to be taunting him. Moving faster than he should. Time was already 28 minutes past Nat 4. And already he was swearing, hunched up on his back with no view. He had no idea where he was, how much further he was going around the world. 29 minutes past 4. And he had reached the last 60 seconds of his life. Felt a sudden job for a terrible moment. He saw the bomb had detonated, and he realized that it was impossible. He hadn't heard anything, but then suddenly the model's retro rockets had been fired. He twisted his head round and peered through the periscope. Arcadia was already a mile away, vanishing into space like a pebble dropped into a well. And then it exploded. The bomb blew up. A burst of orange flame that ripped the entire space station apart, sending the different models spinning in a different direction. The arms with the solar panels fell away. There were 2 more explosions, and a shower of brilliant sparks and dazzling bursts of white light. They stretched out in silence. So it's my dad snoring. In silence, I felt a sense of euphoria. He had succeeded. He had put a bomb in the exactly right place, and instead of propelling Arcadia towards Washington, he had simply destroyed it. There was nothing left. A few pieces were flying through space. They would quickly burn up. At last it was over. He fell. The crackle of the radio stopped abruptly. I found himself in the grips of silence so complete that for a moment he thought he might have died. And he had to remind himself that he wasn't home yet. They were plummeting down, feet forward, moving at 18,000 miles an hour, 5 miles a second. This was the most dangerous part of the entire journey. If the control center had miscalculated, he was going to be incinerated. Already he was aware of the pink glare outside the window as the model began to rub against the Earth's upper atmosphere. And then he was on fire. The whole world was on fire. The air was breaking up, being smashed to pieces. The electrons separated from the nuclei. The model had become a fireball, and Alex knew that his life depended on hundreds of double tiles surrounded him. He was in his heart of living hell. He yelled out. He couldn't help himself. Then the red disappeared, like a curtain being torn apart. He saw blue. Then there was a second back-breaking jolt as the parachute deployed. The world seemed to shimmer. On the other side of the window, I saw the Pacific Ocean spread out before him. A splash, steam waves lashed on the windows. Suddenly turned the water into diamonds, and at last silence. He was rocking back and forth, 100 miles off the east coast of Australia, the wrong side of the world. But that didn't matter. Alex Riley was back. Read other great books by Anthony Horowitz. That's the end of me reading you Alex Riley, book 6. So, goodbye everyone, and thank you for listening to this. Finishing off the back at the end of Alex Riley. Goodbye everyone, thank you for listening to this.